Good morning once again. Welcome, everyone. So we have a session, the Yoga of Bhagavad Gita. And we have Shri Anmol Jain, for this session. He, by education, Anmolji is an IT engineer. He's worked as software engineer in TCS for around 7 years. He's living as a devotee of Sri Aurobindo and the mother in Pondicherry now for last 8 years, and giving spiritual talks, taking classes on spiritual subjects for the last few years. I've been very fortunate to do many sessions of Bhagavad Gita, the rounds of recitations of Bhagavad Gita with Anmol Bhaiya in last 3 years. And it has been a wonderful experience and a very enhancing thing in my life, in my progress, in my growth. Thank you, Anmol Bhaiya, for accepting this request. Over to you.
Namaste to everybody. Am I clearly audible?
Yes.
All right. So we'll just start with a invocation to the Gita. I'll say the Sanskrit first and then the English. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamrita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashaധ്യായിനീം अम्बत्वाम अनुसंदधामि भगवद गीते भवद्वेषिणी. Om, O Bhagavad Gita, with which Partha was enlightened by the Lord Narayana himself, and which was incorporated in the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa, the Blessed Mother, the destroyer of rebirth, showering down the nectar of Advaita and consisting of 18 chapters, upon thee, O Bhagavad Gita, O loving mother, I meditate. It says Anusandadhami in the text. So perhaps uska anusandhan karna, to invoke it and to call it into ourselves. And though the session is titled The Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita, since most of the illumination that I have gotten regarding the Gita is from Sri Aurobindo, his book Essays on the Gita. So I'll just say his mantra and Sri Krishna's mantra, and then we begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Aravindaya. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. So, as the prayer said, the Sanskrit prayer said, Bhavadveshinim. Right? Bhava means becoming. Literally, Bhavasagar bolte hai Hindi mein, the ocean of becoming. Dveshini means which makes us to cross it. So, I wanted to start this session with these two very, very powerful sentences of the mother regarding the importance of the Gita and how its action is taking place now. Sri Aurobindo has written an aphorism on the 4 great events. I'll just read it. Just give me a second. I'll try to show it on the screen also. In which one of them is the Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Am I allowed to share the screen, Shweta?
Yes, Priya, you're
All
co-host.
right, all right. So, yeah. Is this visible or should I increase the font?
Better increase the font a little bit.
Yeah. 1 second. I'll read it.
Do a
Finding it.
command plus no Anmol. I barely able to see this if you don't mind.
Right.
Yeah, that helps.
So, this is the aphorism I'm referring to, the one I have highlighted here. There are 4 very great events in history: the siege of Troy, the life and crucifixion of Christ, the exile of Krishna in Vrindavan, and the colloquy with Arjuna on the field of Kurukshetra. The siege of Troy created Hellas, that is Greece. The exile in Vrindavan created devotional religion, for before there was only meditation and worship. Christ from his cross humanized Europe. Now, the colloquy at Kurukshetra will yet liberate humanity. The keywords here are yet and liberate. Yet it is said that none of these 4 events ever happened. So while commenting on this aphorism, the mother said these 2 sentences. Sri Aurobindo considers the message of the Gita to be the basis of the great spiritual movement that has led and will lead humanity more and more to its liberation. That is to say, to its escape from falsehood and ignorance towards the truth. Since it's a long sentence, I'll just repeat it once more. Sri Aurobindo considers the message of the Gita to be the basis of the great spiritual movement that has led and will lead humanity more and more to its liberation. That is to say, to its escape from falsehood and ignorance towards the truth. Then the second sentence. From the time of its first appearance, the Gita has had an immense spiritual action. But with the new interpretation that Sri Aurobindo has given to it, its influence has increased considerably and has become decisive. So, very, very clearly, the teaching that is there in the Gita, the yoga that is told by Sri Bhagavan in the Gita, is the basis for spiritual development and our liberation from our ignorance and bondage, right? And second part, the reason why we have almost 30 people here in this session, the influence of the Gita has become decisive. It's translated in almost 75 languages of the world. On International Yoga Day, I mean, that is mostly with the idea of Hatha Yoga and all that. But to have a session on the Gita and this kind of interest, this is something occult which the mother has revealed. The influence of the Gita has become decisive. I will not go more right now into the historicity and development and evolution of the Gita's action. If time is there, I'll come to it later on. The subject of this session is the yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. Right? So, essentially, if we are to say, the Gita's yoga consists of three yogas: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, and none to the exclusion of any of the other, but all of them together. Essentially, this is what the Gita's yoga consists of. It is called by Sri Aurobindo as the triple path, combining these three, right? If I have to narrow down on the word yoga, just the word yoga, जिससे हम start कर रहे हैं, at least in the first section of the Gita. Now, when I say this, the talk will be a little informative also, and largely it will try to cover what essentially is the yoga of the Gita. Okay. So the 18 chapters of the Gita are divided by Sri Aurobindo into three sections. Okay. First 6, next 6, and the last 6. In his main commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, which is the essays on the Gita, there are two portions, two series. First containing 24 essays. Those are just on the first 6 chapters. The following 24 on the next 12. And he makes the title of that chapter is The Gist of the Karma Yoga, of the 24th essay, okay, which is like the summary of the first series in a sense. Now, when we say yoga, okay, some of us are familiar, most of us think that the Gita teaches us karma yoga, karma karo, karma karo. Some other ideas are there that there are verses, or some people take it to mean that it teaches sannyasa. Okay? But just if we see the main Sanskrit text of the Gita, in the 3rd chapter, verse number 3, Lokesmin Dvividha Nishtha Pura Prokta Maya Nagha Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yogina. In this world, Loke Asmin Dvividha Nishtha. Two are the established faith, established idea that has been there from the olden times. Pura Prokta. It is said that they are from the olden times. Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam. Those who are following the path of the Sankhya, for them, Jnana Yoga. And now the phrase that I was waiting for, Karma Yogena Yogina. If you think of the word yoga in the sense of the Gita, one of the phrases that ought to be remembered is this one, Karma Yogena Yogina. Basically, the yogis in the language of the Gita are those who follow the Karma Yoga. Okay. What does essentially Karma Yoga mean? Offering one's actions to the divine, each and every action to the divine. There are steps in that. I have selected a few quotations from the essays on the Gita and the letters on yoga to illustrate my ideas. But essentially, when we say the yoga, again, the wider definition is that it includes not just karma or just jnana or just bhakti, but it is a perfect combination of all the three yogas. But usme bhi, if at all you want to make a mistake, I am saying, in practicing the yoga of the Gita, better to err on the side of purely practicing the karma yoga rather than the jnana or bhakti. Reason being, Sri Aurobindo says it is the first step, and most importantly, the insistence in the Gita from the beginning till the end is on karma yoga. No matter what knowledge you get, no matter what devotional states of ecstasy, swoon, this, that, whatever, but your hold on the reality, your grounding in the world of action that should not be compromised. This is the demand of the Gita. As Sri Aurobindo says, it is the greatest gospel of Karma Yoga ever given to mankind. All right. So, Karma Yogena Yoginam. Even the first section, as I said, including the first 6 chapters, it ends with this tapasvibhyodiko yogi, jnanibhyopi matodikaha, karmibhyaschadhiko yogi, tasmat yogi bhavarjuna. And of course, in the next verse, the idea of bhakti is there. But again, essentially what I'm trying to say is that the emphasis on karma yoga is there throughout the Gita. There is a quotation from the chapter called The Core of the Teaching, last 2 paragraphs, which illustrates this point. 1 second. Is this visible on the screen, the slide? Can somebody confirm? Is it clearly visible? Okay.
Yeah.
This is Essays on the Gita, core of the teaching, last 2 paragraphs. The argument of the Gita resolves itself into 3 great steps by which sun rises. Somebody has. Can you mute the other people, please, for now? Yes. The argument of the Gita resolves itself into 3 great steps by which action rises out of the human into the divine plane, leaving the bondage of the lower for the liberty of a higher law. Very important, and that is why I had, because it gives the steps clearly. Okay? First, by the renunciation of desire and a perfect equality. Works have to be done as a sacrifice by man as the doer. So in this first step of Karma Yoga, you think you are the doer. Okay? The shloka from the Gita relevant for this would be 2.47. Karmanyavadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetur bhuhu mate sangostva karmani. And the next one, yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyatva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samubhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Yoga is again one of the synonyms which is used in the Gita for yoga is samatvam, equality, seeing that oneness everywhere essentially, right? So first, by the renunciation of desire, prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogatan. The last section of the second chapter, taking out all desire from you, taking it away from you. And again, when the word renunciation here is used, it has to be remembered. There are 2 words that are used in the Gita for renunciation. Okay? One word is sannyasa, which is, you could say, the more common and popular word. The other and more important word is त्याग. Chat में किसी ने क्या लिखा है? Okay. Sannyasa is the external renunciation. The Gita allows it for those who are constituted that way, or for some reason they find it more, they can't help it basically. So it is allowed, but it is the external renunciation wherein you renounce things completely. You just don't get involved and you renounce and you try to go within and find that liberty. The Gita's preference, the Gita's vote, as if you would call it, is for Tyaga, which means the inner renunciation. And the Gita says in the 3rd chapter, if you dwell on if you pretend basically to renounce, and all the time you are thinking of the objects of senses or all that you renounced, it is nothing but mithyachara. Okay. गीता का जो योग है, it is the yoga of Rajarshis. Again, if you want to put it clearly, कि what is the difference? समीर जी, ये स्क्रीन पे, अच्छा, okay, doesn't matter. So, and the way Sri Aurobindo explains the evolution of Indian spirituality and everything, sannyasa was a long phase. Sannyasa by mean ki where the importance was given excessively to sannyasa. It had its necessity and all, but the balance that is kept by the Gita between the inner realization and the you could say the realization of the divine even in the outer world. For that, the ideal that is there is the ideal of the Rajarshis. Okay. Those who want to note down can note down. Verse number 3.20 to verse number 3.26. कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धिम् आस्थिता जनकादयः लोकसंग्रहमेवापि संपश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि यद्यदाचरति श्रेष्ठः तत्तदेवेतरो जनः स यत्प्रमाणं कुरुते लोकस्तदनुवर्तते. These are the first two. It goes on. Basically, he says that Janaka and the rest, karmanaiva hi samsiddhim, through karma indeed, Janak and the Rajarshis, they attained samsiddhi.
जो
Perfect.
हाँ मैं आऊँगा जी
तो तुम्हारे से
Shweta, can you mute the other participants for right now? If there is time, we'll in the end have questions.
I request everyone to please keep themselves on mute. Saurabh ji, I think your mic is.
No. So, this is a very important point to remember when we think of the teaching of the Gita. It is given by a Rajarshi, Sri Krishna, to another Rajarshi, Arjuna. What the Gita wants you to, and it says in the beginning of the 4th chapter, this knowledge of the Gita, yogam, okay, the word, our keyword for the session, yoga of the Bhagavad Gita, imam vivasvate yogam proktavanaham avyayam vivasvan manave praha manurikshva kave bravit evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo vidu. It was known among the Rajarshis. Sakale neha mahata yogo nashtaha parantapa. In the great passage of time, this yoga was lost. Saevayam mayatedya yogaha proktaha puratanaha. Today, I am again going to give you that old yoga. This is what Krishna says. So to remember this point, that it is not external renunciation which the Gita accepts it for those who need to follow it, but what it wants is the inner renunciation. So I come back to the quotation. Tyaga is better than sannyasa. Very, very clearly, this is there in the essays on the Gita. Tyaga meaning internal renunciation, sannyasa meaning external also. There are verses in which the sannyasa and tyaga, you have to read it in an inner sense, then you rightly understand the word sannyasa as it is used in the Gita. Otherwise, you are liable to get confused. And herein, I would like to say that whoever is interested in understanding the integral and complete and most perfect meaning of the Gita without any bias towards any of the paths, there is only one book that I know of which can do that to you, that service to you. That is the Essays on the Gita by Sri Aurobindo. For those who like to see in the verse by verse fashion, the best book is what is called The Message of the Gita, edited by Anil Baran Roy, right? So this is just very strong recommendations for all those who are attending this session. It's a masterpiece, Essays on the Gita. So I come back to this quotation. First, by the renunciation of desire and a perfect equality, works have to be done as a sacrifice by man as the doer. This is the first step. When we think that we are the doer, and with that condition, in that thinking, we offer our work to the divine. Yat karoshi yadashnasi yat juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. 8th या 9th chapter में आता है, whatever you do it as an offering to me, right? And there are several third chapter में, fourth chapter में, like this. But the key, and कर्मण्यवाधिकारस्ते, to action you have the right, but not to the fruits thereof. तो उससे वो आपका वो जो desire है वो उससे कम होता है, right? But that is only the first step. To whom is the sacrifice done? Again, it is important to remember. See, the Indian spiritual journey, if you want to say begins, halanki there is no beginning as such because it is ageless, with the Vedic synthesis. And the Vedic synthesis, it is about gods. The idea of the one God is there, Ekam Sat, but there are so many gods. Agni, Indra, Varuna. A point comes in one of the Vedic texts. The question is raised, Kasmai Devaya Havisha Vidhema. To which God should I offer my obeisance? The Gita makes it absolutely clear. It is the Purushottama. Devan Deva Yajo Yanti Mat Bhakta Yanti Mamapi. Those who worship the gods reach the gods. Those who worship me reach me. So the sacrifice is done to a deity who is the supreme and only self, though by him not yet realized in his own being. This is the first step. As a doer, you are identified as a doer. This is the initial step. Secondly, not only the desire of the fruit, but the claim to be the doer of works has to be renounced in the realization of the self as the equal, the inactive, the immutable principle, and of all works as simply the operation of universal force of the nature soul prakriti, the unequal, active, mutable power. Okay. There's a very strong verse in the 3rd chapter, verse number 27. Prakritehe kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashah. Ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. It is Prakriti through the gunas which is doing all actions. Prakritehe kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashah. Ahankara vimudhatma. Deluded by egoism. Man thinks that he is the doer. Ahankara. Aham mane me, kara means to do. I do. Okay? But again, this is the second step. ये प्रिटेंड करना कि मेरे अंदर कोई अहंकार नहीं है, मैं तो मुक्त हूं और जो एक्शन मेरे थ्रू हो रहा है वो तो सब भगवान कर रहे हैं, द शक्ति dwelling in me is doing it. That is why this matlab should be read again and again, and seen how much we are able to put this into practice sincerely. Just even if these 2 paragraphs are taken away from the session as an action point, the session would have been successful. All right. So not only the desire of the fruit and so on. Lastly, the supreme self has to be seen as the supreme Purusha. इसको गीता बोलती है परह पुरुषः in 13.23 and Purushottama. The whole 15th chapter is titled that Purushottama Yoga. Right? In the aphorism that we saw, the exile in Vrindavan created devotional religion. That devotion, the true devotion, is not possible without the idea of the Purushottama, which is given in the 15th chapter of the Gita, clearly expostulated. Starts hinting about that from the 2nd chapter. Yukta asita matparaha. That is the first time when he speaks of being in a state of yoga. You should consider me as the supreme and offer everything to me. But it's in the 15th chapter that that idea of Purushottama is clearly spelled out. And it is that idea which makes possible the true kind of bhakti. All right. So Supreme Purusha governing this Prakriti, of whom the soul in nature is a partial manifestation. Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhutah sanatana. Again, a very important point. Those who want to note down, this explanation comes on Essays on the Gita, page 445. The half a verse that I quoted is 15.7. Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhutaha sanatana. Verily, it is an eternal portion of me that becomes a jiva in the world of jivas. What Sri Aurobindo says here is, if words have any meaning, so close to the exact language that he has used, what this means is that we are eternal individuals. The equivalent word in Sanskrit for the English word individual is jiva. There was never a time when you were not there. There will never be a time when you will not be there. This is practically the first teaching of the Gita. Natvevaham jatunasam, natvam neme janadhipaha, nachaiva na bhavishyamaha, sarve vayam atah param. There was never a time when I was not there, or you were not there, or these kings of men were not there. And there will never be a time when I will not be, or you will not be, or these kings will not be. I mean, this is 2.12. So that who are we basically? We are a portion of the divine. Portion is a way of saying, because the reality, the truth is indivisible. इसको break नहीं किया जा सकता है, right? But avibhaktam vibhakteshu vibhaktam iva cha sthitam. It is undivided but appears as if divided, right? But it is eternal. We are eternal. Okay? जो यहाँ पे है, it's a partial manifestation. Ansha is the word. By whom all works are directed in a perfect transcendence through nature, by the Supreme Self. Again, when the Gita speaks of natures, very important, because these are words most common to us, words nature, self, all this. It speaks of two natures. Okay? The lower, apara prakriti, and the higher, para prakriti. What is the lower nature constituted of? Bhumirapo nalo vayuhu kham mano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme bhinnah prakritir ashtatha. This comes in the 7th chapter, 3rd or 4th. You can see that. So the eightfold nature. And what is the fulcrum? What is the thing that is holding together this lower nature? It is ego. Okay. This is what has to be transcended. I had selected 15 verses, which Sri Aurobindo says is the summary of the Gita given in the Gita itself. 18.49 to 18.63. In that the word comes nirmama, which means no possession, but nirmamo nirahankaraha sashantim adhigacchati, the transcendence of ego. And in the higher nature, right, para prakriti jiva bhuta, the higher nature is called para prakriti. It is that which becomes the jiva. It is that which becomes you and me, the individual, right? So the Gita speaks of when it speaks of the avatarhood, of the divyam janma of the avatar descending, Sri Aurobindo says it has two meanings. It's not just the descent. The divyam janma in the 4th chapter, 4.9, I think, it refers also to, it means also rather, not just refer, to our own divine birth into the higher nature, into the para prakriti, into the divine nature. All right. So just for the sake of reiteration, okay, just leave it. Otherwise, there's some few other points. But essentially, first step in this is you think you are the doer and you renounce the desire, you renounce the fruit of the work that you are. In the second step, you think that you no longer have the illusion that you are the doer. Again, in the 4th chapter, beautiful verses. Karmanya karmayah pashyet akarmani cha karmayah sabuddhiman manushyeshu sayuktaha kritsna karma krit. He who sees action in inaction and inaction in action. He is intelligent among men, he is a yogi, and he is a doer of all action. True action, most effective action is that which is done effortlessly. To arrive at this state of effortlessness, and that cannot be achieved until we get rid of egoism completely from our nature. Ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Very strong. Deluded by egoism, man thinks that he is the doer. Actually, we are not the doer. It's the guna guneshu vartante. It is the gunas playing among themselves, right? And then we reach that final stage, जो यहाँ पे third point में बोला है, where we are united perfectly in our will with the divine, by virtue of which, as a result of which, the divine will flows through us seamlessly. You can think of it as becoming the flute in the hands of Krishna. Could even extend the example further and say that just like the flute has, 7 openings, they could be seen as our 7 chakras, our subtle body. And Krishna is freely, playing his music through that flute, through those centers of consciousness, and that perfect action is happening through us. This is what the Gita ultimately wants us to achieve, to live in that state of union with the divine, inner union with the Purushottama, with the divine, but not to give up action because of that union and just be absorbed in that ecstasy of bhakti and all that. No. To act in the world as the divine's instrument. Ultimately, even that sense of instrument will go away. There will be a perfect union. Because there is a purpose in the world. I mean, whoever is familiar with Sri Aurobindo, they know that this is the idea he most strongly puts forward, that the world has a meaning, it has a purpose. It is not mithya or maya, as the last almost 2000 years of Indian spirituality has tried to, it's not the whole of it, but that note has been dominant. That is a major correction that all of us have to do in our psychology and in our active life. To him, love and adoration and the sacrifice of works have to be offered. The whole being has to be surrendered to him. This, the Mahavakya of the Gita. Some people say Karmanyavadhikaraste is the Mahavakya and all that. It is not the Mahavakya. For finding the Mahavakya of the Gita, you don't need to go anywhere else. The Gita says it clearly. Paramam vachaha. Sarva guhyatamam bhuyah. Shrunu me paramam vachaha. Ishto sive dridhamiti. Tato vakshyami te hitam. This is 18.64. Because you are exceedingly dear to me, I will tell you now the supreme word Krishna says. And then he tells the Mahavakya in the next 2 verses. 2 or 1, depending, but if you want to say in 1 verse, that is Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishyami Mahashucha. This verse then is not further elaborated, just stops there. After giving all these dharmas, all the yoga, this, that, and all, ultimately what the Gita teaches is, and this is the greatness of the Gita, as Sri Aurobindo says, that unlike other religious books or philosophical doctrines, it does not bind you to its own system. In the end, it sets you free. 18.66. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Abandoning all dharmas, take refuge in me alone. Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. I will liberate you, I will free you from all sins. Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. Do not grieve. Sri Aurobindo basically in his integral yoga, he begins with this point, the surrender, total surrender. The emphasis in his writings, The Mother and Letters on Yoga, and even in Light Divine and Synthesis of Yoga, it's on this surrender. But again, as he wants, this surrender should not be fake. It should not be inert. It should not be the surrender of an inert automaton. It should be of something living. And again, see, trying to be as practical as possible. These are stages in the yoga. Okay? One should not. Please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. The flow breaks, it is difficult, right? So the surrender has to be genuine. And it is 18.66. After saying all this, finally it liberates. But what all is said before that, for most people, it is a necessary base, a necessary ground on which you, by which you proceed, and then you reach that stage. In fact, Sri Aurobindo says, जो वो first series है, 24th essay, the gist of the Karma Yoga, first 6 chapters. He says, if the Gita were not a great written book, if it were a discourse, then the teacher could have stopped here at the 6th chapter. and said that what I have told you, there is enough already in this to realize. First, you realize this and you reach a certain level, then we'll continue forward. But because it is a great written book, written under the inspiration of Krishna by a great yogi, that's what Sri Aurobindo says. Whoever wrote the Gita was a great yogi and certainly received his inspiration from Krishna. That is why and if you see the essays on the Gita also, first series comes in 1922 as a book, and the second series there is a big gap of 6 years. So systematically, step by step, for those who are following the yoga of the Gita, they have to be patient and honest and sincere. And rather than understanding as a whole we must have, and I'll try to give that in this session. 20 minutes are left. But basically, one has to go step by step, right? So act in a perfect spiritual liberty. Yeah. Now, the first step is Karma Yoga, the selfless sacrifice of works. And here the Gita's insistence is on action. The Gita's insistence on action is there right till the 18th chapter. Have you understood, he says. Kachidetam Shrutam Partha Tvayekagrena Chetasa Kachit Ajnana Sammoha Pranashtaste Dhananjaya. Has your delusion been removed or not? Have you listened to this teaching carefully and are you ready to act? And then he says, Nashto Mohaha Smritir Labdha Tat Prasadan Mayachita Sthitosmi Gata Sandeha Karishye Vachanam Tava. I'm now ready. I will do what you say. The insistence is on action from the beginning to the end. Otherwise, without action, there is no fulfillment in the world. Right? The second step is Jnana Yoga. Even in the synthesis of yoga, if we see, this is the krama, this is the order in which the 4 yogas are given by Sri Aurobindo. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, only 8 chapters in that on this, and the yoga of self-perfection. I'll cover 1 or 2 of those quotations. Okay, what is not there in the yoga of the Gita, what is missing in it, which is completed by Sri Aurobindo's teaching, and later on in the day, Dr. Alok Pandey's session is there on the newness of the integral yoga. In that, he will elaborate completely, fully on what is there. So those who are attending this session and those who want to have an idea of what more is there beyond the yoga of the Gita. In the imagination of most Indians, Gita being in our blood and everything, completely imbibed, it is difficult to imagine that there can be something even greater than the teaching of the Gita. So they are recommended to attend that session, right? And here the insistence is on knowledge, but the sacrifice of works continues and the path of works becomes one with, but does not disappear into the path of knowledge. The last step is Bhakti Yoga, adoration and seeking of the Supreme Self as the divine being. And here the insistence is on devotion, but the knowledge is not subordinated, only raised, vitalized, and fulfilled. And still the sacrifice of works continues. The double path becomes the triune way of knowledge, works, and devotion. As I said right in the beginning, not one path to the exclusion of the other 2, but a perfect synthesis of all the 3. Achha, how these paths relate to our parts, what we have inside us in our being? The Karma Yoga for the will in us, for that will to be united with the divine. The word yoga means union. Okay? In modern context, International Yoga Day, yoga is meaning Ashtanga Yoga, physical exercises. That may unite the body consciousness or free up the energies in a certain way. कि वो physical consciousness के अंदर एक certain union होगा, या it may prepare you for yoga, but that is not the real union. The real union with the divine consciousness, with the Supreme, is attained by the practice of the yoga of the Gita. ऐसे कहा था जो first quotation में. Sri Aurobindo considers the message of the Gita to be the basis, आधार है. All right. So the last step is Bhakti Yoga, adoration and seeking. And still the sacrifice of works, the double path becomes the triune way of knowledge, works, and devotion. And the fruit of the sacrifice, the one fruit still placed before the seeker, is attained, union with the divine being and oneness with the supreme divine nature. For those versed with Sri Aurobindo, the 4th yoga, the yoga of self-perfection, What does that self-perfection mean? It means putting on the divine nature. That is what he calls the transformation of the nature. So here it's just hinted here, union with the divine being and oneness with the supreme divine nature. The Paraprakriti, you put on the Paraprakriti. Okay? ये तो natural है, ये तो मेरे nature का part है. Okay, as long as one is in that state, but exactly, the point that which is natural and animalistic and the ignorant human, it is that which has to be ultimately replaced by the supreme divine nature. This is the aim basically in a succinct way given by the Gita. All right. So, Shweta, do we want to do that poem in the end that needs to be read, or what should I do? Tell me. 15 minutes are there. I'll try to.
You continue, bhai. Continue.
All right. Just 1 second. Yes, this is an important. Is it visible? The Gita cannot be described as exclusively a gospel of love. Okay. So, we have the ISKCON movement and जो Gaudiya Vaishnavas का है from that side, and this whole idea of bhakti for Krishna in that way, Ras Leela and all that, जो सारा association जुड़ा हुआ है. Just to clarify it, the Gita cannot be described as exclusively a gospel of love. Important. And again, it is the third step. वो जो first two मैंने पढ़े थे core of the teaching के, it is like the essence of this session. Okay. What it sets forth is a yoga of knowledge, devotion, and works. When I say knowledge, I mean, there is now it is going more and more. But this thought phobia that we have as Indians in us, पढ़ना नहीं है, ज़्यादा सोचना नहीं है, इतना दिमाग नहीं लगाना है, से काम नहीं चलेगा. That part of us, that knowledge part of us, that intellectual part of us, it will remain unfulfilled. Savitri में श्री अरविंदो कहते हैं, each part in us desires its absolute. What about that knowledge part? Right? So, and I mean, if anybody listening to this session can start, getting to read the essays on the Gita, please read the essays on the Gita. If there is a good Hindi translation also available, try as much as possible to read the English. The mantric quality is distorted when you read any translation. Please read that. If you want the commentary style, again, second time I'm saying the message of the Gita. It's very important. Or bhakti without that solid base of knowledge, it can turn into mere sentimentalism. Sometimes it can turn even into violence, fanaticism, right? So what it sets forth is a yoga of knowledge, devotion, and works based on a spiritual consciousness and realization of oneness with the divine and of the oneness of all beings in the divine. Bhakti, devotion, and love of God, carrying with it unity with all beings. This is very important. Again, this is what the Gita teaches. Mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana eva. All this is strung on me like pearls on a thread. That Krishna within, that divine within has to be found, by which alone we can get at that underlying unity. Efforts to feel the unity via other means are useful towards this ultimate thing, but this is the only way by which we can attain that unity, by finding that divine within us, and that divine is there within everybody. In fact, the Gita says that those who are not able to see the divine equally in all beings, that imperishable in the perishable, I mean, they are the ones who are really vision. They are the ones who are really having the vision, it says. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyatsva vinashyantam yah pashyati sapashyati. Right? Bhakti, devotion, and love of God, carrying with it unity with all beings and love for all beings, is given a high place, but always in connection with knowledge and works. Right? So now, in whatever remaining time is there, I'll try to just those 15 verses which are like the summary. जो मैंने भी बोला है, this is the essence, okay? But I'll just say them in Sanskrit. It will take around 3-4 minutes, and then close the session with those two quotations from Sri Aurobindo, wherein he tells that what all things the yoga of the Gita covers and what it does not cover, and it remains to be covered by his synthesis. Is that fine, or are there any questions, or do we need to keep time for questions? I am flexible that way. What is the mood of the participants here?
भैया श्लोक बोलिए ना प्लीज.
Okay. So I tried to memorize them, but let me see. So it's from 18.49 to 18.63. All right. And again, nothing from my own. Sri Aurobindo says that the Gita summarizes itself in these 15 verses before the great word of the diapason, Sarvadharman Bhagat. Asakta buddhi sarvatra जितात्मा विगतस्पृहः नैष्कर्म्य सिद्धिं परमां संन्यासेनाधिगच्छति. सिद्धिं प्राप्तो यथा ब्रह्म तथाप्नोति निबोध मे. समासेनैव कौन्तेय निष्ठा ज्ञानस्य या परा. बुद्ध्या विशुद्धया युक्तो धृत्यात्मानं नियम्य च शब्दादीन् विषयान् त्यक्त्वा रागद्वेषौ व्युदस्य च. विविक्तसेवी लघ्वाशी यतवाक्कायमानसः ध्यानयोगपरो नित्यं वैराग्यं समुपाश्रितः. अहंकारं बलं दर्पं कामं क्रोधं परिग्रहं विमुच्य निर्ममः शान्तो ब्रह्मभूयाय कल्पते. ब्रह्मभूतः प्रसन्नात्मा न शोचति न कांक्षति. समः सर्वेषु भूतेषु मद्भक्तिं लभते पराम्. भक्त्या माम् अभिजानाति यावान् यश्चास्मि तत्त्वतः ततो मां तत्त्वतो ज्ञात्वा विशते तदनन्तरम्. सर्वकर्माण्यपि सदा कुर्वाणो मद्व्यपाश्रयः मत्प्रसादादवाप्नोति शाश्वतं पदम् अव्ययम्. चेतसा सर्वकर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्परः बुद्धियोगम् उपाश्रित्य मच्चित्तः सततं भव. मच्चित्तः सर्वदुर्गाणि मत्प्रसादात् तरिष्यसि. अथ चेत्त्वमहङ्कारात् न श्रोष्यसि विनङ्क्ष्यसि. यदहङ्कारमाश्रित्य न योत्स्य इति मन्यसे मिथ्यैष व्यवसायस्ते प्रकृतिस्त्वां नियोक्ष्यति. स्वभावजेन कौन्तेय निबद्धः स्वेन कर्मणा कर्तुं नेच्छसि यन्मोहात् करिष्यस्य वशोऽपि तत्. ईश्वरः सर्वभूतानां हृद्देशेऽर्जुन तिष्ठति भ्रामयन् सर्वभूतानि यन्त्रारूढानि मायया. तमेव शरणं गच्छ सर्वभावेन भारत. तत्प्रसादात् परां शान्तिं स्थानं प्राप्स्यसि शाश्वतम्. इति ते ज्ञानमाख्यातं गुह्यात् गुह्यतरं मया विमृश्यैतदशेषेण यथेच्छसि तथा कुरु. This is the 15 verses, but just because the Mahavakya is not covered, so the next three also I'll say. Sarva guhyatamam bhuyah shruну me paramam vachah ishtosi me dridhamiti tato vakshyami te hitam manmana bhavamadbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me sarvadharman parityajya मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वा सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः. Right? So, 1 second. What I have recited is 18.49 to 18.66. Yes. Just in a summary, what is the Gita's yoga? and then those two quotations from Sri Aurobindo's letters. Is it visible? To break out of ego? To break out of ego and personal mind and see everything in the wideness of the self and spirit. To know God and adore Him in His integral truth and in all His aspects. To surrender all oneself to the transcendent soul of nature and existence. To possess and be possessed by the divine consciousness. To be one with the one in universality of love and delight and will and knowledge, one in Him with all beings. To do works as an adoration and a sacrifice on the divine foundation of a world in which all is God and in the divine status of a liberated spirit. This is the sense of the Gita's yoga. Right? Just one second. And what is left, which is covered by Sri Aurobindo? Yes. Just two more and then we'll stop. The ordinary life consists in work for personal aim and satisfaction of desire under some mental or moral control, touched sometimes by a mental ideal. Now, some of us may be following this much and thinking that we are following the spiritual life or doing the yoga. No. He says this is the ordinary life. It's very difficult कि वो desire के उससे बाहर आना. We want it, but we say no, we don't want, and all that self-deception, right? The Gita's yoga consists in the offering of one's work as a sacrifice to the divine. Again, you see here, the first thing that he writes here is Karma Yoga, offering one's work as a sacrifice to the divine. The conquest of desire. Vigata Spruha, okay? 18.49. Egoless and desireless action. Bhakti for the divine. And again, bhakti, चार तरह की भक्ति गीता में बताई है. The real one is in which there is the jnana. Okay. And it is the third step in the, it's not, okay, when I'm saying third step, is it possible that will, knowledge और heart को separate करके चले कि अभी केवल मेरी will काम करेगी, heart काम नहीं करेगा? It's not possible. So they go simultaneously, but this is the natural order in which the yoga proceeds and in which how it encompasses the other paths. All right. Bhakti for the divine and entering into the cosmic consciousness, the sense of unity with all creatures, oneness with the divine. This much is covered by the Gita's yoga. And I would say to not, take any chances. Basically, the most clear and authentic and क्या कहना चाहिए जिसमें unambiguous and not partial towards this or that commentary or interpretation of the yoga, of the Gita, is the essays on the Gita by Sri Aurobindo. Please read that. All right. This yoga, by this yoga he means his yoga, Sri Aurobindo's yoga, also called yoga of transformation, integral yoga, right? This yoga adds the bringing down of the supramental light and force, its ultimate aim. Even this supramental is referred in 14.3 and 14.4 of the Gita. वहां उसको बोलते हैं महद ब्रह्म. मम योनिर महद ब्रह्म तस्मिन् गर्भम दधाम्यहम संभवः सर्वभूतानां ततो भवति भारत सर्वयोनिषु कौन्तेय मूर्तयः संभवन्त्याः तासां ब्रह्म महद योनिः अहम बीज प्रदः पिता. These are the two. वहां पे वो महद ब्रह्म is nothing but the supermind. Why I'm trying to say this is कि supermind is not something of a creation or concoction of Sri Aurobindo. It is there from the Vedic times, and then in the Upanishads it's called Vijnana. In the Puranas it is called कौन सा Maharloka बोलते हैं. In the Gita it is called Mahad Brahma. Okay. This yoga adds the bringing down of the supramental light and force, its ultimate aim, and the transformation of nature. And finally, this one. This, maybe I should not say it because, the idea of this session should be to build ultimate faith, but like the Gita itself does in Sarvadharman Parityajya, freeing the sadhak from the narrow bounds of the teachings of the Gita. So there's nothing narrow in it. It's very, very wide and very universal. But whatever that is left uncovered. So in the similar spirit, just this last quotation from a letter of Sri Aurobindo. it is not a fact that the Gita gives the whole base of Sri Aurobindo's message. For the Gita seems to admit the cessation of birth in the world as the ultimate aim. Cessation of birth is not the ultimate aim. Cessation should not be of birth, it should be of ignorance. The mukti is from ignorance, from limitation. Okay? If the world has to progress, then the liberated ones, the ones who have truly attained power by virtue of that liberation, they need to come again and again and work for the upliftment and betterment of the world. Right? 10:30, I'm sorry, just 1 minute more. For the Gita seems to admit the cessation of birth in the world as the ultimate aim, or at least the ultimate culmination of yoga. It does not bring forward the idea of spiritual evolution or the idea of the higher planes and the supramental truth consciousness and the bringing down of that consciousness as the means of the complete transformation of earthly life. This is the aim of Sri Aurobindo, to make this earth into a heaven. Complete transformation of earthly life. Iska the best possible is given in his book called Savitri. This earthly life become the life divine. This is the prophecy of Sri Aurobindo. The idea of the supermind, the truth consciousness, and so on it goes. Finally, जो यहाँ पे आता है, the idea that the world is not a creation of Maya or only a play, Leela of the divine. Those of us who think of Krishna, immediately we think of Leela, but it's not just play in that sense. If you want to unite the ideas of play and evolution, then when the divine hides himself in the inconscient and then he reveals himself to himself, that involution and evolution, that is the hide and seek of the divine, which he is playing. In that sense, that is the meaning of the word Leela or play in the true sense, right? Or a cycle of births in the ignorance from which we have to escape. But what is the world? What is it really? A field of manifestation in which there is a progressive evolution of the soul and the nature in matter, and from matter through life and mind to what is beyond mind, till it reaches the complete revelation of Satchidananda in life. It is this that is the basis of the yoga and gives a new sense to life. Halaki, as I said, even Sri Aurobindo, he is not even, कि first 6 chapters में realize करने को इतना है, तो for the sake of completeness, I have said this here, but the step-by-step thing has been already explained by Sri Aurobindo, how to proceed in the yoga of the Gita. So 10:32. Any questions, or if there is no time, then we can simply close with silence.
We can take 2 more minutes to take some questions if there are any, or if you want to.
I had actually thought of
Yeah.
keeping around 10 minutes for questions, but then there is so much content in the Gita and in the essays on the Gita. And main thing is, that वो जो 2 paragraphs थे वहाँ पे, the core of the teaching book chapter के last 2 paragraphs for guidance on us as to how to go about practicing the yoga of the Gita. Questions?
Anmol, thank you for an amazing session. I had a question. You gave a very good breakup of the 3 steps. And you said
Yes.
we are so focused on our ego consciousness, and ego is the one which bonds those, and you explained how the 3. Could you just summarize those 3 once again? Because that really is something we all can identify with.
I will read the 3 steps as given by Sri Aurobindo here. Okay. First, by the renunciation of desire and a perfect equality, works have to be done as a sacrifice by man as the doer. A sacrifice to a deity who is the supreme and only self, though by him not yet realized in his own being. This is the initial step. Secondly, not only the desire of the fruit, but the claim to be the doer of works has to be renounced in the realization of the self as the equal, the inactive, the immutable principle, and of all works as simply the operation of universal force of the nature soul, Prakriti, the unequal, active, mutable power. Lastly, the Supreme Self has to be seen as the Supreme Purusha governing this Prakriti, of whom the soul in nature is a partial manifestation, by whom all works are directed in a perfect transcendence through nature. These are the 3 steps. And the first step is Karma Yoga, the selfless sacrifice of works, and goes on. But I mean, even that does not make it clear what is Karma Yoga. So these are the 3 steps. This is the text I'm highlighting here. Somebody wants to take a screenshot, they can take a screenshot also. But yeah.
Anmol, Anmol, this is Anjali Jaipuria here.
Yes, Anjali.
You were amazing. The whole talk was amazing. I have only one request, that we would
Yes, please.
like you to please share the recording. This has to be heard again and again to actually
The
understand.
recording has been done by Shweta. She is conducting the whole day program. And as she shares it with me, I will share it with you.
Please
We
do
will
share it, because my
we will
group would
directly-
love to.
Yeah.
Sir, I have
Thank
one
you.
question, if you
Yes.
kindly permit.
Can you
Sir,
please switch on this thing
in
also?
Gita, as you said, the Mameka Sharanang Braja, that is a
Yes.
very important sloka. Now, will it mean
That
that
is the Mahavakya. Yes, correct.
Mahavakya? Now,
Yes.
will it mean that if one were to take his shelter, he would be in Mathura and then Vrindavan and then Dwaraka?
No,
So
no,
what
no.
is the
That does not mean outer. Again, that's the difference between sannyasa and tyaga, external and internal. What it means is taking refuge with the Krishna within you. उसको consciousness के अंदर realize करना है. He has to be real. See, the Gita, Ishvaraha sarvabhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati. Brahmayan sarvabhutani yantrarurhani maya tameva sharanam gacha. You have to take sharana of that Ishvara within you. Living in a sacred place, I am myself living in Pondicherry, so that helps. That helps in uniting with the inner divine and feeling the presence and everything. But I mean, it should not be that one should not be able to. Basically, the refuge has to be taken in the divine within oneself. This much has to be clear. Living in, again, I'm not discrediting. Again, myself, I'm living in Pondicherry. But Dwarka, sorry, Vrindavan में या कहीं पे, that can be a help. उसको वो एक तरह की सालोक्य मुक्ति हो जाती है, ठीक है? But the Gita does not want you to remain satisfied with सालोक्य मुक्ति. Okay? What the Gita wants is, Gita की language में साधर्म्य मुक्ति. Ultimately, even your law of being should become one law of being with the divine. Am I clear?
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay, welcome. Any other questions? I am happy to take, I have no problem of time, only I think next session, when was it?
Next session is at 11, so maybe
It's 10:38
we
right
can take another 5 minutes.
Matlab
Yeah,
if
10:45.
yes, anybody has, feel free to ask. Do not hesitate. If I am able to answer, I will try. No? All right. All right. Maybe for those who do not have a hard copy of the essays, again, I'm saying this 4th time. Please read the essays on the Gita. Please read the essays on the Gita. Please read the essays on the Gita. We can share the link to it. Some people can read it. Chat में डाल दें अभी क्या? Incarnate Word. CWS.
Yeah.
I
No, I'm
put the
anyway going to share the recordings. So with that, we can share even the slides that you have made.
you can do that. Yeah, let me just do it here. अभी session on है.
Sure.
जो काम साथ के साथ हो जाए. 1 minute. 19. So chat में how to put it? Chat. So this is the
अपलोड कर सकते हैं वहां पर.
I have done it. Essays on the Gita. The good this incarnate word is ki even the verse numbers, they are sometimes put in line with the text. So Essays on the Gita ki copy mein Sri Aurobindo is translating freely and rendering, but in the later chapter, second series में footnote में आता है, first series में नहीं है. In this, at many places, even the verse number of the Gita is put in line in the text. So that is another advantage of following this link, reading this link. Okay, then shall we close? No more questions? Nothing? All right. Thank you everybody for your time and patience.
धन्यवाद
Thank you, Divya.
भैया
Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Thank you, sir.
Pranam, sir.
The next session on Mudra starts at 11.